Hello, my name is Adam. I am currently an environment art student at Nomon. I am in the 2-year program, and this is more of a journal or documentation of the current project that I'm working on for me and for anyone interested in environment art and want to see how I'm doing and what I'm thinking about. This is more, like I said, of a journal. I'm going to be rambling a lot. There's no script or structure, but I did want to talk about my process, what I'm thinking about, and how I'm developing this as I go along. And I hope you find that enjoyable. Okay. First things first is that I think the key to any good piece is reference, and we are taught this vigorously at Nomon. We are taught that you need to have reference, have a lot of it, and look at it very frequently, because if I'm trying to copy a style of any game, I want to make sure that I have a ton of reference of that game, to know the color palette, to know the design decisions they're making, because I'm trying to match it one-to-one. I'm not trying to copy, I'm trying to improve on, but I'm doing my best to make sure that the style is consistent with the art that I'm creating. Okay. As I began this project, I was thinking about the thematic. So I took each map that's currently out in Valorant and I kind of wrote a one-sentence sentence, right? And I started to take this idea and continue forward with it when thinking about what I wanted to make. I really wanted to do something that was a little overgrown, but also a little more sci-fi biolab heavy. Not really one of the maps that's a city, such as Split or Pearl, or like the beach one, Breeze, but I really wanted to do something closer to the thematic, similar to Fracture, or maybe just Icebox without all the ice. Yeah, so I thought of a secret biolab facility with a water treatment plant, as well as a lot of overgrown experiments. I tried to do a little bit of research onto the world of Valorant, that there's this technology surrounding radionite that these people call radiance, and that this is new and experimental technology that you figure out an alternate dimension is trying to steal from. So how could you use this technology if it's used for energy and power and has all these crazy technology? Obviously, you could try to use it, not obviously, but you could try to use it for agriculture. So I thought about, what about a facility that's testing on plants and doing some dangerous labs, but gets shut down either by the government, by Kingdom, or a terrible accident. So yeah, like I said, similar to that to Fracture or any of the more metal-like labs. And you might notice this layout too. I am not a level designer. I am an environment artist. So after I had chosen my thematic, I also was concerned a little bit about my level layout. And my level layout I actually decided to base off of the Counter-Strike map Dust 2. And I just I'm taking the layout from a site from Dust 2 in particular. I told myself that if I can develop one good bomb site, then I can develop the rest of the map how I see fit. I don't know how much time these things take. I have done a couple of environments before, but nothing that I'm trying to copy a style one-to-one and keep very organized and optimized. So I just took bomb site, and as I deviate away from this square section of the map here, I think I'm going to try to make my own level decisions and be a little more ambitious on that front. But I wanted to start somewhere safe and really jump into the art as soon as I could. So I use this as a level design layout. Credits to Counter-Strike 2 and Counter-Strike Global Offensive. The next thing I did was I gathered reference of all the maps, every single one. So this is the newest one, so this is most screenshots that I found on their website. And I went in and just kind of grabbed it. And these are really, really important, because like looking at anything like trims and how many materials are on a wall, and how they're integrating everything is really key to trying to match a style. Really amazing use of vertex painting and trim sheets that I'm gonna try to create in mine, right? I'm thinking about how are they using trims here? How many metals are on this one piece alone? And this piece is mostly flat. Of course, there's this inset here, and there's these two possibly separate pieces, but this is a very low geometry object, and you can even see like maybe all the metal plates don't line up on some seams, and that's okay. So I'm looking at what they're doing, and not necessarily mistakes, but design choices that they make that their players aren't going to care about. And some other resources besides just screenshots from the map that I referenced was that they have some really, really good videos online. Ignore that. where they have some amazing documentation of the artist Lydia Zanotti of Frisk, and I think that some of her breakdowns of the maps were invaluable, right? And also this one on the creation of Split on their website by Carney and Salvador, Chris Carney and Salvador Durazo. And this was a couple years ago, but I still think very relevant to what I was doing. And it just goes over their design choices and what they're thinking about. And these are all things that I'm trying to keep in the back of my head as I'm making my decisions. So I took some notes. And this one was also great, like going from concept art to, and these GIFs were invaluable to how I started planning out my own. And you can take these and just bring them straight into a PRF. And like I said, this is not my art, just want to make that clear. But these are really amazing breakdowns of like, oh, this is what the level designer is doing first in gray box, and then this is the rough block out. And this is kind of where I am now, maybe a little past this, but this is the sort of the stage that I'm working towards, right? Getting all these metal plates and panels and trim sheets in, and then this is the final. Obviously a huge step up from the art block out, but this is the goal eventually, and I'm going to try to get there. Yeah, but really great resources. I'll link these if I remember to, but they're just on the official Valorant website. If you look up Valorant.art and Art of Valorant Map environments, then this will probably be the first link that pops up. Another great resource, Artstation. The same artist has an Artstation, and they post all their breakdowns of all the maps they worked on, and I think these are super helpful. They're high resolution, right? And some of these have the GIFs as well. So huge shout out to the people that post their work and for RIOT allowing the artists to post their work. I think it's really cool that I can look at these freely, especially like stuff like texture breakdowns too. You can see that, oh, maybe they're using ZBrush instead of Designer for some of these, and that's a really important thing to know. I'm using Designer for all my textures, which I'll go into later, but super cool stuff. And yeah. And then finally, they have a YouTube channel, and I'm sure I'm missing some resources out there, but this is a great playlist of a lot of their artists. And this one in particular was about a level designer and an environment artist. The level designer going over what they think about in the game and how they hand off that project to the environment artist and going from scratch. So this is also invaluable research. I took a lot of screenshots from this video, and they talk about like, oh, player height should be at where the trim is so that people know where to aim, and don't use too many ramps because just the smallest change in elevation can really change the gameplay loop. So taking a gameplay first mindset, even if you're an environment artist, can be really important because the fluidity of the gameplay and how it feels kind of comes first, especially in a tactical shooter like this one. Yeah, but really like this video, all the considerations they're talking about, and I did take a lot of screenshots of this, like, you know, rough gray box, but still very, I think, successful in displaying Valorant style and what they're thinking of. So highly recommend checking these out if you're interested in doing a project like this on your own, even if it's for a character or anything really. Okay, so yeah, I took screenshots. They actually have their kit too, so I use these screenshots for the direction I took my textures. They're using very desaturated because you want to make sure the enemy players are very highlighted and stand out. And these are some of the notes that I was taking, right? And I use these notes pretty frequently and thinking about this. I can't really test often, unfortunately. I'm not a programmer and I don't have access to the source files. So I'm doing the best I can with what I got. And I'm kind of like flying through the level and being like, if I was a player and taking this angle, what would I look at? Is there anything too distracting? Is there anything that is taking my eye away from the gameplay? And how hard would it be to defend or attack something like this, right? Okay, so all my reference, get it in here. All the textures, all the map reference, and then all the things that I want primary reference from, screenshots of props and development props from the Valorant team. And these really, like I said, key for me, at least, were all these GIFs of how every single step of the way. It's just invaluable, really. You know, like how much detail are they adding? What are they decide to remove? Some of these, they're removing complexity. And I thought that was very interesting, where they decide to remove or increase complexity based on like possibly where players play more or where they're going to be looking more often. Yeah, really cool stuff. So I have my reference, I have my basic layout, and the first thing I do is I go into Maya, actually, not Unreal. I would usually export the Unreal dummy, and I will It's my earlier version. And what I would do is that I would put the dummy in here and make sure that all my starter blockouts are to height. Like this thing, the Unreal dummy is exactly almost this height. Because in Counter-Strike and in Valorant, you have a lot of boxes that are almost exactly player height. And maybe if they're on here or on this elevated platform, they could see just over these boxes. And that might be interesting. So having a good scale reference for when you're exporting and importing objects can be really important. So you don't mess that up when you're getting it into Unreal. And this is my rough gray box. I'm not worried about too much about I'm not worried too much about detail or getting maybe like a little bit, right? A little bit of insets, a little bit of topology, just to but I'm trying to keep it relatively low res and getting it into Unreal as fast as I can, because I think getting through the pipeline fast is also really important. So I would take this gray box, and then in Unreal I first set up my leveling system. So I created a level maps folder, I created a persistent, which is just where all my other sub-levels are going to go. Then I started with gray box. And this was meant to be a way for me to just see, okay, where are my objects going to fit? And I know it's a little hard with this texture. There's a lot more objects that were in it now than that were before. But I would pretty much just go in here. Yeah, and then I just applied this blockout material to everything. And as a placement guide, kind of for all my objects. And then after I did that, I started to bring in all my pieces one by one and texture them. Another thing that I did is that every time I make a new texture, I would make sure to add it to my little kit section here. And I don't have all of them, I'm actually missing one or two, so which I will get in. But it's good so I can really test those saturation values and check my objects to see how they compare. So I have this little kit set up, and I just, I can turn this on and off. And I make sure to lock the layers I'm not using so I don't accidentally add an object to the layer, which I do mess up sometimes, but I just copy and paste it to the proper layer. And I just started with the very big, large shapes, like this big structure here, or these large boxes, something that players are really going to interact with and be with. I didn't really have any foliage in or anything like that when I initially started. And everything was very monotone as well. Right now, I don't think I actually have enough saturation range, or I don't have enough color value range, but that's something that I'm going to tweak as I go along. Okay, so I'm modeling in Maya, and it's kind of just, you do this layer by layer, right? I take every object, and I just think about, okay, how is this object both important for gameplay, but also important to the story? Like, if this is a water plant that's meant to make energy and is next to a biolab facility, what are some important things? I have the radionite crates, which they're trying to steal, so those are very important. Maybe I have these pipes that are going into the facility that pump a lot of water in and out, and maybe that water can be used for hydroelectricity. So maybe I have a water pump facility and I have an electricity plant facility that could be hosting something nuclear, even if it's really that dangerous. And I just try to make every piece make a little bit of sense. I just make sure it fits into the world. I want it to make sure it feels cohesive. A lot of Valorant shape language too is all about these long angles and sharp corners, as you can see in a lot of their textures. And I'm using metal plates for a majority of this bomb site. And I'll probably deviate once I do a little bit more development. But right now I'm trying to use metal plates, so everything is beveled and everything looks very nice and shiny. And I'm just keeping that shape language in mind. And I'm also, like I said, I'm going back and I'm always checking my reference. I'm always checking the props. I'm always checking, what are these boxes? Like, I'm probably gonna add cloth later in. How tall are they? How often are there stacks, right? How many textures are in this one building here? And these are all things that I'm looking and thinking about, because these props take a long time for me. And I usually base them off of a prop that I see here. And I just take it and I'm like, okay, maybe this would be useful in some of my taller area boxes. So I take that and I kind of base this one loosely off of it. Yep. Always look at reference. Always look at reference when you're trying to mimic another style. Yeah. And then gray box. And then I would go into Designer and I started making my textures. The first thing that I did when I was making my textures is that I created this brush sheet. The reason I did this is because Valorant has a lot of really subtle brushstroke work in it. It looks hand painted, right? And it's stylized. And when you work in Designer, you use a lot of warps and you use a lot of slope blur, which are good for making stylized textures. But I wanted to make sure the way I was warping and slope lowering felt uniform, right? So what I would do is I made these brushstroke decals, and I use them for multiple projects too. But I made a bunch of these so that when I go in, I could just really lightly use them, so that when I'm making my textures and it's super faint, right? I would take this and I would blur it out and I would change it some, but then I would use it in the base color or possibly the roughness, and it just gives it that little bit of brushstroke detail that makes it look slightly hand painted, a little more crafted. And this might not be the way they do it. I'm sure they hand paint a lot of their textures as well when it comes to the actual game, but this is how I try to keep things consistent, as well as yeah, I could use these for a very large variety of reasons. And here are some more of my textures. I'm not scared to show these or anything. Metal plates, really important. There's just generic gray metal. I should probably honestly make that a little more detailed. This is the tread plate, right? Like I said, I'm using reference. They have some really beautiful textures, even if they're simple, right? Base it off of this one, that big shape read. Yeah, I'm not getting super fine details. I need to touch up this one, but I'm trying to make sure my shapes are big, they're bold, and that they're very distinct. And something that's also super important is these trim sheets, right? I use this trim sheet for everything. One thing I think that the team at Riot is considering that I might not be doing as well of a job with is texel density, which I'll super quickly explain. If I had a 2K texture around this box, there's 2000 pixels that encapsulates all the texture of this box, and I tried to apply that to this giant structure here, like all of it, then it would start to get pixelated, and these hexes would look way huge, and the maps just wouldn't look right. And I'm sure that they have a system for managing that. And of course, I'm trying to stay within a texel density range, but sometimes when I need like this texture here, I need it to be a little bit bigger. And it's okay if it deforms a little bit, because it doesn't break the immersion that, oh, this is a cool panel, but it's also something that I want to use. One great example is like, oh, this top panel here. I have, as you know, a little detail at the top of this garage, but I also have that like in a crevice like down here. And I know that that's generally not great practice, but in the constraints of time and not wanting to use too much textures in my texture budget, I was okay with making small compromises when it came to texel density between medium and small objects. Yeah. Yeah, so trim sheet, really important, really useful. This is the box trim sheet for those boxes on the site. Okay. Some more, and yeah, a lot of these trims I just build to be very multi-use, right? All those like metal plates I use for like the ramp and up here on the side, and I'm probably gonna use for a lot of my other objects as well, right? And this is no, like, obviously this is not final, right? I have a lot of passes that I need to go, a lot of decal passes, but it's slowly getting there. And I think that's a key part of environment art. It's just layers on layers on layers on layers. Like, never get too discouraged, because it just takes a lot of time and a lot of building. Like, tell a story of the raindrop. One of my professors would always say, like, make sure that you understand where's water collecting, how is there green behind the leaves, right? Think about every action you do and how it's affecting the environment, which is very important. Like, what is the purpose of everything you're making as you're doing it? So there's a lot to think about as you're doing it, but it's slow, methodic process. And that's something I actually quite enjoy about environment art. It's not too stressful, although there's a lot to do. It's just building up slowly, brick by brick by brick, until you eventually have something that looks very cohesive and nice. Yeah. So I would make my textures, I would apply them to my object in Maya, and then I would import them into Unreal, of course. And then sometimes I would tint them, like this is my metal plate texture, but tinted with a little more orange. These two are the same textures, and this is scaled down very slightly. But, you know, that line of color is very important. Some of my main references, like I said, are Fracture, and they have this everywhere, right? They have this like orange strip, and then these gray strips, and then these trim sheets, and then these boxes, and they're really expert use of texture. Like, there's just it's very easy to look at and to see, but there's just so many like layers of like trim on texture with normal decals over it. And I haven't even done normal decals or even started to touch that yet, but I'm thinking about like, oh, these triangles would be really cool to create and start to add onto my objects, or oh, there's a cross beam on a window. Maybe that's something I can try to look into my own. Or there's some trellises or wires, like all these tiny little things that really sell the environment that I haven't even gotten to yet that I need to start thinking about. So once I have my gray box in and all my larger props in, I also created some Greeble, and that is just these little props that I can stick anywhere, right? I can just grab them and look, oh, look, this thing sticks here and it's an air conditioner. Hee hee. We love Greeble. Like, oh, there's pipes, and I made a little pipe kit to add to the Greeble as well. And it all lines up to each other. So if I really wanted to make it really complex, like little pipe system, I could create my window kit and my light kit. And like I said, I'm looking at reference whenever I'm doing this. Ignore that. And yeah, and these are all reusable props. So if I ever go to a different part of the map, I'm like, oh, I could use this, and maybe I want to texture it differently. I have access to that. So you kind of build these Lego bricks, and you can always reuse the Lego bricks that you've already used before. And that can be really, really helpful for speeding up the process. Like the more you make, the more you can use, right? Like you don't need to just remake everything from scratch all the time. Yeah. So think about story. Always use reference. And it's just slow layering and building, right? And that's where I am right now. So like I said, this is about 3 weeks of progress, right? I have some of my kits down, I have some of my pieces in place, and I'm still working towards it. I think I'm really gonna try to flesh out like some of my decal kits, some normal decal kits, and really flesh out this bomb site before I move on to anywhere else. But I hope that all relatively made sense. If you have any questions, like I said, this is a journal and a really rough like development blog of a student environment artist, but I hope it was of some use to you, and if you're still here, thank you for watching. So there you go. That's what I was thinking about. That's my process. Like I said, any specifics, feel free. I hopefully will get to me and I'll get back to you. I will do my best. But yeah, I might do another one of these like a week by week. It's like progress updates, but this is where I'm at now. And yeah, any questions at all, even if you don't really know much at all about 3D modeling or environment art, game art, I would love to answer what I can. I'm very passionate about this stuff, even if I'm just getting into it, or not just, it's been a couple years, but I'm still a student and I still have a lot to learn, and I hope that this was helpful. So yeah, sorry for the ramble, unscripted, yada, 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 but yeah, I hope you have a good day, and see you next time, possibly. Later.